My next guest is blazing a trail in the music industry. His new project, Transparency, is topping the charts. Terrance McCoy is on top of the world, but for many years, it seemed the world was on top of him. He joins me today to share his inspirational story. Welcome, Terrance.
Uiwa, so good to meet you finally.
Thank you for being so brave in tackling my name, because many have just, yeah.
I worked very hard on it.
Now, Terrance, when I was trying to prepare for you, I just thought your story sounded so much like a film. It was almost unreal.
I can remember things very early in my life. I can remember a sense of abandonment. I didn't know what abandonment was, but I knew what it felt like to have your mom drop you off at somebody else's house, not for the day, but for a month or two. One stretch was about a year long, and that's very, very confusing for a teenager or somebody even older to go through, but for a small child, it was frightening. And I was very small. I was probably 3 years old, and I remember that.
Now, you're making music that many of us are listening to, lifting our hands in euphoria to God and having this great worship experience, but it's come at quite a cost for you. What was the darkest part of the journey?
I have always had a terrible fear of failure. I think many people do. The thought of failing would just destroy me in my mind. So failing was, failure's not an option.
Failing who?
Failing myself, failing the people that I love, failing marriage. Even in my first marriage, I tried so hard to make that work. Sadly, my story is very hard to hear, but it's also a very beautiful story when you hear it in its wholeness. But I did not want my marriage to fail. I wanted so hard for it to work.
So in the middle of you going through this, relationships failing and all the things that go with it, and because typically I guess those of us looking from the outside have such a highfalutin view, think, "Ooh, what are they doing?" You're saying in the middle of that, you had high hopes to achieve more than what was going on.
Right. I don't know if this will answer this story, but this question, I really want to say this, though. I grew up in a church that was very legalistic, and following rules was a huge part of going to church there and living your life like that. It really is a huge part of what caused the problems with my mother. Just trying to be good enough. And I grew up checking off that list, constantly scratching off this, trying to get that list done. And the longer and the older you get and the longer you do it, you realize, I can't do it. I can't do this. This is impossible. And I wanted so badly to achieve something. I didn't even view it as love or marriage as ridiculous as that sounds. That was my life. I just wanted to win. I wanted to make it through this and prove everybody wrong. This was so backwards, the way I went through.
So like I said, we're at this moment now where your name is on the lips of radio announcers and blogs are writing about you and all that. At what stage did you embrace the grace of God and get to a place of healing and the journey you're doing now and being able to offer healing to others? At what stage were you able to embrace that grace of God?
The stage of a concrete floor. I hit the very bottom. I bounced off of the bottom. I hit it so hard. I lost everything. I lost my daughter. I lost my truck. I lost my home. I lost most of my clothes. I sold them all just to try to pay a water bill. And I was in, I just failed the third marriage. And that was the rock bottom for me. Was, you had mentioned in the introduction about coming face to face with death. And I was so heavily stressed and frustrated. And all of it was just coming down on me. And one day, I finished an odd job. I did odd jobs, painting houses. I don't even know what this particular job was. I had finished the job, and they didn't have the money. I needed the money in a bad way. I was very broke, didn't get the money, and I was very frustrated, very scared, and I didn't get paid. And I remember seeing stars. I just saw stars. I didn't know what it was, but I called a friend of mine, Steve, that worked for EMS. He told me to go down to a fire station. There was one right down the road. I went down there, and to their shock, my numbers, I can't remember the actual numbers, but on my high blood pressure were ridiculously high, dangerously high. They told me, they didn't ask me, told me to go into the ambulance and go to the hospital. And I said, how serious is this? And he said, you should be in a massive stroke.
Wow.
And he said, get in the ambulance. And I told him no.
Why?
Because I wanted to die. I wanted to die. I was tired of failing. I was tired of doing everything wrong. I was tired of letting everybody down. And I thought I was just going to go home and lay down in my ex-wife's bed. And while she was gone, I really thought I was going to take an eternal nap.
Wow.
But I woke up. I woke up. And I just bounced off of the very bottom, and I was ready to just let go and trust him with my whole life. And it didn't just all change in a day for me. It was a long and difficult process, but it was a process of recovery, a process of salvation, a process of a turnaround, a massive turnaround in my life. And God has lovingly surprised me.
Wow. Terrance, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.